All right, we'd like to welcome you all back to the Trampled Underfoot Podcast. This is your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajedo. And boy, I'll tell you what, I'm enjoying the past episode. I was enjoying that one. We had some pretty neat back and forth with strange things that happen on this planet and people and all sorts of craziness. So let's see what happened let's see what happens this evening. What's going on, Mark?
I think it'll probably be a little more down to earth this time from the sounds of it. We don't talk about what we're going to talk about. Sometimes we don't even know what we're going to talk about until we do this intro here. Then somebody will say something and we'll just take off in a direction. But we kind of did a little bit of note comparing. And I think we're kind of getting back to our roots as far as this podcast is concerned this time. We'll see how wrong I am. It's my edit, so this may not make the edit. We'll see how my prognostication goes.
Well, that's I mean that leaves the door open for a lot of like scratching of the head because I'm thinking to myself, our roots. Hmm. You mean our roots in terms of the things we used to talk about, but talk
Yeah.
about not much anymore, or
Yeah,
what?
what we got started on, what started this entire adventure. I mean, this is episode 157. And we basically used to talk inside baseball here. This is just ignore us. This is two old guys catching up on stuff. We basically used to talk like this in Hangouts back when Google Hangouts was a thing.
That's
And
right.
a couple of friends of ours, mutual friends of ours, said, you guys should do a podcast. And then one approached us, Doc Hildebrandt. Thank you, Doc. Said, you know what? We got some time to kill on the podcast network. You guys should make a podcast. And here we are.
We're
We
the only ones
started.
left.
We are the only ones left on this network. That's right. We should. There we go. The Trampled Underfoot Podcast Network. I like the sound of that, man. Anyway, so we started, and this was the kind of stuff we would talk about in Google Hangouts. Just Eloy, I, and a few other people. You know who you are, and it just kind of blossomed from there. But we did kind of get away from some of those topics. But in comparing notes before he pushed the button, we may be getting back to our roots. So yeah, Steve, you can take a nap. So
So,
did I set that up too much or what?
no, I don't know because I see that pre-assumes that what people's reactions would or would not be. We don't know. We have no idea what people's. I mean, there could be someone out in a diner somewhere with like just cornfields all around. It's just like a metallic, one of those mobile diners sitting in the middle of a cornfield with like a hookup to electricity, and there's like somebody sitting in there reading a book, and they have their MP3 and they're listening to us and they're saying, "Thank goodness I can hear this stuff." We don't know, you
No,
know.
we don't. We
There,
don't.
there could be somebody somewhere in a basement slashing people up while they're playing while they're playing the thing. See, I know that's going. I know that's going into the ridiculous and absurd. But
Well,
the
thanks
thing
for
is,
that visual.
well, see, because the thing about it is that beyond our headspace, because we're very good at interpreting the universe around us in order for it to make sense to us. It's very hard for me, and I'm not saying this like for you. I'm saying this like for me, and I believe for everybody that we need to make interpretations of what other people, preemptive stuff, or we do it instinctually. And I think that it's a
Okay.
human thing, but don't ever be surprised at what people would like and appreciate You know what I'm saying?
I do. I do. I
But
get
there's
it.
the other extreme too. Let's not be surprised.
That's
Let's
true.
not underestimate how people would not like,
Well, now, but
whatever.
let's follow that thought. When you think about the audio podcast listener, the people who would listen to us,
Yeah,
what do you imagine? Who do you picture? Because I'll tell you what comes to my mind. What comes to my mind is the person commuting to work or the long haul truck driver who is just cruising through and finding stuff to listen to because it's, 8 o'clock at night, bored with radio, nothing's on XM satellite. Let's see
yeah,
what's on some podcasts.
yeah.
That's what comes to my mind. Or the person who's commuting to work and just needs something to fill the time.
I can tell you what I can picture in my mind. I could picture two different varieties. Maybe somebody sitting somewhere in their home office with a computer, various computers, um, in their swivel chair, and you know, maybe they're working on websites somewhere down in Mississippi. And then I can picture another variation where it's someone that's probably in the next room to you or next two rooms somewhere in the vicinity. I can picture those two options. But beyond that, I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I don't know. I just, to me, this is like hanging over the back fence with a glass of iced tea and BSing with the neighbor. You know what I mean?
You know what would be mind blowing?
What's that?
Because we don't, the fact of the matter is we don't know. But what would, if we knew what we don't know, the possibilities really are. And so if you can think it, I mean, within reason, it's possible. So imagine in the Himalayas, a Buddhist guy that's getting reception with his 10-year-old iPhone, and he's listening to the podcast because why not? While he's doing whatever his thing up in the middle of stuff like that.
Going. Are you guys hearing this? This is what not to think. I'm messing around. I'm messing around.
But think about the
Yeah, I
somebody
mean,
in
that's
Siberia.
that's not who I picture listening to us. It's really not. But who's to say? Who am I to say that it isn't? It's just
So,
not what comes to mind. I just
somebody,
see. I just think about who. To me, anyway, podcasts have replaced radio in a number of ways. And we have talked before, and this is totally not anything that we were talking about the direction this show was going to go
Mhm,
before we hit the button.
mhm,
But I have heard people say that podcasts have basically replaced radio in the same way that YouTube and streaming services is replacing TV. And it won't be long before there is no AM or FM radio because the listenership is plummeting so much with a few exceptions. But listenership is really down on radio, worse than it is for TV because people want to hear that song right now. They don't want to wait for a disc jockey to play it. So everybody's got a Spotify playlist. They hop in the car, they'll load that playlist up and they go.
yeah,
And they're jamming to their tunes that they want to hear right now. And they're not waiting on anybody. And if they decide they don't want to hear this song right now, they hit shuffle and another one comes up. So I heard one local DJ say here in the valley that he sees a time within the next 15 years, radio is just gone and he's going to be looking for a job. I don't know how true that is. So, but what I'm picturing is in my mind is are the people who listen to radio a lot traditionally. And to me, it were people who were commuting and long haul truckers. Because if you're driving coast to coast, there's only so much music you can listen to, especially if you've got to keep searching for stations every 50, 60 miles. So load a podcast and it's going to last an hour. Off you go. That's what popped into my brain. But who's to say that I'm right or wrong?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what because there could just as easily be a cultural backlash to everything. I doubt it. Certain things digital. We don't know how things line up. Public popular demands um, may shift in ways that we don't will shift in ways that we don't understand. Because I mean, if we did understand that stuff, we'd be geniuses prepping for the next big change in culture, and we could
Yeah,
make some serious, So we don't know how that would, because it's just really a bunch of independent individuals making certain moves across the expanse of society
right.
that apparently organically starts to turn the ship of culture in a certain direction. We just don't know why back in the day phones were yay big, and then the next cell phone they made the huge ones where everybody wanted to, and then they went back to tiny phones
Hmm.
and all these things. I mean, we just don't. Is it propaganda and people shift with it, or is there just enough propaganda that they force something, or is it the other way around where popular demand is the one that changes what companies do?
I
We don't know.
I don't think that will ever be explained. Basically, you're trying to explain a fad or what becomes popular and why. I mean, who can explain the coonskin cap in the 50s? Who can explain the hula hoop? Who can explain the pet rock in the 70s? I mean, who can explain the Rubik's Cube? I mean, there were millions of different puzzles introduced right around the same time the Rubik's Cube. Why was the Rubik's Cube the one that hit? Nobody can explain it. I
I
mean,
had one.
yeah, I did too. I mean, I was in seventh grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, something like that when those things came out. And, but it was just one of a bunch of things that for some reason they hit while other things didn't. And I don't think anybody really can explain why they hit.
Let me throw this at you. I didn't expect this to happen,
I didn't either.
but and I was gonna link you, but I said let me not overburden the guy. Actually, I linked you with something that has nothing to do with what I'm gonna tell you now, but the other day, yesterday, I think it was, just another layer of freaking right rabbit
Uh-huh.
holes. Just it's a bunch of stuff. Imagine a golf field with gopher
Mhm.
holes all over the place, and golfers stealing the ball. That's basically the conversation. Um, so there's this guy on YouTube, and there's plenty of them that what he does is he collects the most ridiculously hilarious commercials that the intention of the commercial in itself when it was produced back in the 80s 70s 90s whatever was to sell a product. And but what he does is he collects all these product commercials into one package, and the start of the video starts with one product to the next until you finish the video, and each product becomes more insane and insane, and these are legitimate, like, products mostly from America, where a company said, hey man, we need a freaking butter measured squeezy squeeze thing, or we need the and I couldn't help myself watching those, and every other one was so insane. It was so surreal and insane, and people's reactions. Um, that I watched the whole thing, and at the end of it, I was like, my goodness, we are such a mess, as a society. Because he packaged it enough so that you could see how everything is so phony just to sell
Uh,
the product, and it was a one grand experience, to be
are
honest
you
with
are
you.
you talking about like those as seen on TV products?
Yeah,
The microwave pasta maker, and then the salad shooter, and then the salad scooper upper, and all that other good stuff.
I'll give you one example.
Mhm.
Actually, to be honest with you, the reason I found that was actually
Mhm.
because I watched that Arctic video that you sent me,
Yeah.
And on the heels of that Arctic video, I saw on the side that weirdness,
Yeah.
and I
That's
said,
suggested. Yeah.
and I just clicked on it. I'll give you an example of what weird. There's a whole thing commercial where a lady has a whole cookbook, recipe book on everything to do with ramen, and she makes ramen cakes, ramen bread, batter, ramen, and it's so ridiculous. But she's so darn serious, and what she does is she has this whole just America, USA, hometown apple pie. Oh, I'm sorry, even the apple pie, she says, and don't forget about your American made apple pie with ramen. And it literally, and she's not joking. This is a recipe book because ramen is so inexpensive, and you can
Oh my
incorporate it into all
gosh.
these. It's just ridiculous. It is.
Yeah. I mean, America, if America is good at anything, it's good at taking something and running with it. I mean, it wasn't enough that pizza came over and got really popular after World War II. We took it and we ran with it. And anything, just about anything you can think of, people are putting on pizza.
Yeah.
You know, we did the same thing with tacos. We did the same thing with burrito. We do that a lot with food. But I think I'm going to say something controversial here, but but can we stop with the food? I think it's, and I don't mean you and me. I mean, can we stop tinkering with it? It's good. Food is good. I think we can stop tinkering with it. It's kind of sort of like Michael Jackson. There comes a point where you got to stop tinkering with the noggin. You're not looking like your sister. Now you're starting to look more like E.T. Let's time to knock it off. Let's leave it alone. You
Yeah.
know, and I don't know. I think we may be there with food.
I mean, I'm sure that no one will heed your advice, but
Well, I mean, there's a reason why we don't have persimmon milkshakes with extra
cow
pomegranate.
dung.
I mean, yeah, there's a reason we don't have certain things. It's because they just don't taste good together. So, we can let's stop tinkering, you know. So,
That video that you sent me. Um,
yeah, I was going to talk a little bit about that, but yeah. What did
okay,
you
go
think of
ahead.
that? It was one of those things that just popped up in my suggestions. And what it was, I don't even remember the title of it, but what it was a demonstration of condition 1 weather in Antarctica. These people are in a research station, um, in one of the American research stations in Antarctica. And at first, they're just standing in in a corridor of the dorm. And they're saying it's condition 1 weather, and this is what it's like with condition 1 weather. And they're walking down this hallway, and there's little graphics coming on saying condition 1 weather is winds over 55 miles per hour, and they give a temperature range which was bottomed out at something like 120 below zero, and they said being outdoors is prohibited. And they get to this little, I guess you'd call it an airlock. I guess there's an interior door down at the end of this corridor,
It's a
and
section off.
to section off from the outside door. And
Yeah.
she opens that door, and it goes from a nice carpeted hallway with paint on the walls. They open this inside door, and there's like 6 inches of snow on the ground, and the
Yeah.
walls are just plastered with snow. And she walks up to the door, and she says, "Are you ready for me to open the door so you can see that it looks like a whole different world out there?" And she opens the door. I mean, just for about, what would you say, about 3 seconds, maybe?
She tried to close it a couple of times
Yeah.
because the winds were pushing her so hard that she couldn't lock it proper the first time.
Pitch black and snowing and wind. And when she said this is like opening a door to another world, she was 100% correct, because it went from being just, inside, you open the door and you wouldn't have been surprised if you'd have saw the devil standing there with a pitchfork. It was that was that hellacious. And she just, and like you said, it took her 3 or 4 tries to close the door. I will go back and find that video and I'll post it over on the Trampled Underfoot Podcast Facebook page. Real short video. It's only about a minute long, but go over to Facebook, type in Trampled Underfoot Podcast. That's us. And I will put it there as soon as we're finished live here. So
I watched a couple of other videos. There's a guy that's stationed there, and he did a whole tour. And the facilities down in the Antarctic, for their base camp or whatever, is pretty expansive. Inside, they have whole gyms. They have music rooms. Their computer rooms, cafeterias. Their sleeping quarters. All sorts of different amenities. He went into like the reserve backup, like power generators room. In case everything else fails, you go into that last call. And it seemed a little bit like that movie Aliens, where if you've ever seen the movie Aliens with Sigourney Weaver, where they're in this big, thing, hole, and it feels like they're alone. There's a few people, but it's nothing to do with a bunch of people. It's a very weird, like an empty. Yet it has all the It's a really cool. I liked the vibe, and so I watched it and stuff, and I was amazed at all the amenities that these people have.
Wow.
In the middle of the damn cold.
Well, you got to figure it's Antarctica. It's not like they can hop in the car and run down to 7-Eleven if they're out of something. I mean, they've got the specific, they're there to do a specific job, and it is the job of others that they rely on to make sure these people have everything they need, because we're in autumn now, heading into winter. They're just now heading into spring and coming towards summer. So it has been pitch black 24/7 for our entire summer. Their winter, it's been just flat out dark 24/7, and they're getting ready to go into now perpetual daylight. So they're just now starting to get a little bit of normal, a little bit of normal daytime nighttime schedule, But what struck me about that the most was how hostile that environment really is, because this research station has been there for years and years. And you don't even think about it. I mean, I don't even think about it. When I was in the Army, I thought one of the coolest ribbons I ever saw, a service ribbon that somebody wore on their uniform, was an Antarctic service ribbon and had a little bar decoration on it that said "Wintered Over." It's that tough, it's that rough, that they have an award if you actually do winter over in an Antarctic research station. And I always thought that was just one of the coolest things I'd ever seen in my life. Totally forgetting just exactly how hostile that environment was, or is rather. I remember a few years back, and I don't recall exactly when it happened, but one of the researchers there, I mean, they have hospitals and treatment centers, the whole thing. One of the researchers there was so sick they had to fly in, put them in an air ambulance, and fly them out. And just the risk of flying in there to pick them up, I mean, it made the news. It was that risky to do, because it was their winter, and the weather is so severe, anything could happen, especially when you're talking about 60, 70, 80, 120 mile an hour winds out there. Some of the fastest winds ever recorded on Earth have been recorded there in Antarctica. So it's not something to be taken lightly. It's not like they just hop in a chopper and fly over.
I'm
And
starting to feel
it
cold.
made the news. So, well, you can be rest assured you will never feel as cold as that woman was when she opened that door. Believe me, you
Well, we
will
don't know.
never be that cold.
Never say no. Never say no. Well, actually, that's not necessarily true. We're all going to be that cold.
No, I don't think we will.
Well,
Not 120 below zero. I don't think so.
well, if I really wanted to salvage, like if I had to bet money on it, we could say yes if we were to extend the towards when the sun burns out completely, and then we would all. But that's going into the macabre.
Yeah, I would never feel it. None of us would feel it, I don't think.
But
No.
it is cool because the size of the base
Mhm.
was it's so huge that it's like, and it was just him that I saw. I don't know how many other
Mhm.
people. He was waiting to be
There are
picked
quite a
up
few.
within a few. He was waiting to be picked up within a few days or something like that. So I don't know how many other, but it feels like there's plenty of I mean, there's a gym. There's a full like
Oh yeah.
basketball gym, huge like space inside there. So it feels like, so in the space that I live here in my house, I think you could fit like 100 of mine into that thing. So what I'm
Oh,
saying is
oh,
that
easily,
you
easily.
could
This is a big station.
you could kill time. What I'm saying is that there's enough there to not feel claustrophobic. I would assume to a certain degree.
Now, I have not verified this story. Okay, I heard it on TV. It is apocryphal. It may or may not be true, but I did hear it talked about on TV. Supposedly, now this is back in like 2018, something like that. Supposedly, one of the researchers there got on his smartphone and he went on Tinder, the dating app, and in Antarctica, okay, he got a match with another researcher who was at the same facility.
That is such a commercial.
And I think that is absolutely hilarious. Not only did somebody else turn on Tinder, but they didn't swipe the wrong way going, yeah, no, I don't think so.
You know what that's you know what that's called? Two lonely people in the Antarctica
Uh-huh.
wanting to do the penguin shuffle.
The penguin shuffle. There we go. That's exactly what it is. I think
Well,
that's flippin' hilarious.
well,
You
I
know.
mean, I think it's about, so if there's two humans in you know, well, I was gonna say up nowadays it doesn't matter. I was gonna say,
Well,
I
you
was
got to
gonna say
figure when you get to the South Pole, your choices are kind of limited.
yeah, but see, there's me thinking in the year 2000s or in the 20th century. See, that's me not thinking in 21st century mindset.
Yeah.
See, there I go again. You know what? Forget the whole conversation because it's gonna go south. No pun intended. Really quickly.
I see what you did there. Okay, so subject change. I can do that.
Well, no, because where that was gonna go is not gonna be
Yeah,
good.
I just thought that was hilarious that he got a match on Antarctica. Oh well. Okay, so you said something about you had a movie that you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, but now in light of this, but well, whatever. So I rewatched um because I hadn't watched it for a long time, but I rewatched Idiocracy,
Okay.
and I have to say that it's not, but I at a certain, in a certain way, it is one of the most poignant movies that one could watch if you're getting the message from it that it's it's leaving its audiences, which is you have this guy that's transported into the future because he's an army, military test in a pod, and as time progresses, people just abandon anything to do with knowledge to the point where people become dumber and dumber and dumber, and so even words get shortened, and it just becomes all just chaotic. And he wakes up, and he's an average guy in our time, but in the future he's like complete genius. And these people, every time he talks, because he's shocked, like he's trying to figure it out. Every time he asks something to someone, just directions or whatever, people think he talks kind of sissy like, let's say, in the in the because he's talking with words, right, that have a little bit more than there, or not a little bit. He's just talking normal, but to them they're so oafish at this point that
He's
to them
very articulate.
he's so articulate, but they perceive it as just complete bad, off the charts, uh, sissy like is what they say in the movie. And so I'm watching it again, and my takeaway was that this movie is not a what would be the word, a cautionary tale of what could happen. No, that's not what I took away from it. Now watching it, my conclusion is that it is a documentary of where we're at now. And 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 the reason I say that, well, there's reasons for why I say that, but if you remove the exaggerations with what they're doing, and just the simple fact of putting two and two together on any given, and I'm not talking about disagreements on certain issues, or because disagreements, but interaction
Mhm.
is a process of knowing, discovery, within, so like let's say we're talking about whatever, the reptilian, it's a stupid subject, but just the fact that we're talking about reptilians, and then we're talking about cultures around the world, we're interacting. um One is going to be right, the other wrong, maybe there's a little bit of, but there's an interact. But um there are things that I perceive where people wholeheartedly, um and it's easy for me to say that, right, I would perceive everybody else's, I'm not trying to say that, but I'm saying that um we could probably be those people right now, and since we would be those people, this is theorizing, we wouldn't know the difference. We would think that
Yeah.
you and I, as an example, now using this technology with this microphone through the internet, all this genius stuff, that, I mean, boy, we are like at the cuff. We're cutting edge here, and we might be just complete imbeciles. Um, I don't think we are, but I would think that we're not, right?
Well,
Um, but society at large today, um, are we, and when I say we, I'm talking generalities, but are people heading in a direction of more knowledge and understanding, or are people becoming more dumb? What's happening in your perception?
um, wow, this is one of those subjects. Believe it or not, about 2 weeks ago, I was thinking about this and thinking about bringing up this topic, and I don't. I have mixed feelings. Now, in one context, I don't think we're like that at all. And the context I'm talking about is personal interaction, two people talking back and forth, whether you know the person or not, talking to the guy next to you in the checkout line at the supermarket. You're just talking to somebody. You're having, and just interacting. And it doesn't matter what the subject is. People one on one are completely different from any social media or online persona they may assume the minute they sat down at that keyboard. So I think if we And this was talked about a lot in the 90s about on-screen and online personas. I think if we take what we see online as a person's real personality, we're making a mistake, because I think people are completely different one-on-one out interacting in the real world. You can be anything or anyone you want to be when you sit down at that keyboard or when you pick up that tablet or that smartphone. You can be anything, anybody, anyone. How many people get caught in a lie every year? You know, it's not as common as it used to be, but it used to be on YouTube every week. You heard about people making all these claims, and it's just like, no, you're not. You're lying. There were people caught out a lot, but in real life, they're not that persona. In On the online world, I don't know what it is about the anonymity of the keyboard that makes some people act that way or act the way they do. I think what it is detachment, because when you're standing next to a guy, you're going to behave different than if the guy is on TV. You know what I mean? George Carlin has a routine about that, about how much an Adam Henry a person is in direct proportion to how close that person is to you when you discover that character flaw. You know, if the guy's on TV, you will scream it. You're really an ass.
I
If the
can
guy's
tell
in
you,
the car next to you, maybe it's a little bit quieter. But if the guy's right behind you in line, you're very quiet. The closer they are, the nicer they become. You know.
I can tell you that from the people online that I've interacted with these years, um, that I've met in person,
Mhm.
like let's say JP, him in person for the time the day and a half he spent here in my house, um, destroyed my bathroom practically. Practically, I don't know what he did. Practically leveled the place, created chaos across the. But that aside, he in front in person is basically what you see, at least in my perception of what you see through the internet. Like I didn't see, like when I was surprised that, oh my goodness, it's JP in front of me. Um, so with him, with Bob, when he came down, likewise, it was just
Right.
amazing. So, and same with Javi. Like Javi, you would see him through.
Hmm.
So, I did see a continue. So there are people
But
that there's people that, like in our circles, that I don't know if we're too, I don't know that we're too different than what we're, because we're kind of like naive. We're not good, or I don't think that we would even want to, like we're not trying to sell something necessarily, a persona. We're kind of being our,
right.
we're into a certain, this is us type
but
thing,
but
I
you're
think.
talking about a group of friends who get together on hangouts, video calls, and what have you,
Hmm.
and we've seen each other in our ups and we've seen each other in our downs. I mean, we've seen our friend Steve in the hospital, literally on his device in the hospital with the gown on and tubes sticking out of him, stuff like that. You can't get a whole heck of a lot lower than that. you know we've These are our friends that we have interacted with and have seen the real person. I'm talking about all the folks, even on our friends list on Facebook, that we have not had that interaction with. You see a lot of false bravado. I mean, people say things online that they would never say to another human being face to face. And you know that, because if they did, the US would break out into 150 million separate fistfights every day. You know?
Yeah.
So, as far as your question as to are we becoming dumber, I don't know that we're becoming dumber. We're definitely becoming more opinionated. We're definitely becoming more divisive over things that I don't see any personal opinion. I don't see any reason to be divided over. But we're what we're starting to qualify too many things. There is no good or bad anymore. There's just better or worse. You know, good and bad is a compass to guide you. Better or worse is relative. I mean, you can take everything on the bad side and you're going to find better and worse. That's not a direction, that's relative. And I'm seeing that kind of morphing going on. And I think what we're doing is we're taking the online world too seriously. Because, well, did you see what he said on Twitter? No, because I don't care. Twitter's not a real place.
If you were to remove, so if we were to if our ability to have instant access to events that are going on in remote places across the country and the world, it would be as it was 20 some odd years ago and then some, where we were only informed of our local situations, and then nationwide, whatever filtered through the newspapers and such. And so we wouldn't necessarily, more people would be less intense about random stuff that are completely distant to their particular experience.
I don't know about that. Um, I'm not trying to say that everything you see online is a bunch of BS or anything like that. Instant information is always a good thing if that information is correct. If it's true, like what's going on in the Canary Islands with the volcano.
I just
I've been
agree. I just agreed with. I just emphasized your point, and then you went
yes.
back. And
Well, no, I'm because I'm trying to qualify, because I was thinking about it while you said it, because I made myself sound like if it's online, it's BS.
no,
No,
that's not what I.
well,
That's not
no.
what I got from it.
I was thinking about what I said. I'm not saying when I say the online world. I guess what I'm talking about more than anything else is social media.
Yeah, but what I told you was to
Yes.
accentuate what you were saying, what you were saying, and then you went back, and you went
I'm
back,
well.
and then you went back, and you said no, and you totally
Well,
screwed the
no,
whole thing
I
up.
wanted to qualify what I said, because in my mind, after I got finished saying it, it's like, you sound like you're saying
You're
you can't
anti,
believe anything you
right?
see online.
No,
No,
but
that's
I
not
didn't.
what I meant.
No, but I didn't
No,
take.
it didn't have anything to do with what you said.
I completely understood what you were saying, and I was
Okay.
just thinking out loud,
Hmm.
that if we didn't have the instant, and when I mean we, I mean just basically just a general statement that more people that now like jump off. Did you see what happened in San Diego? I'm pissed for the rest of the day. Whereas because I saw it live, I can't believe that guy Timmy smacked Jesse across the back of her head like that. Whereas before internet, can you believe all those whales? But it would take there was the filter of your news and this and that, and then you had other things you went about your day with.
Sure.
Whereas now you can look it up on your phone instantaneously, and I think that so that's I'm kind of like
Yeah.
I was
No.
reaffirming where you're so we know it's beneficial in the lookup of information and pizza delivery, but as far as passions running high on things that are probably one should not prioritize as getting pissed about, I think that adds to the tension in people. That I think
Yeah.
you're right about that.
Well,
Um,
because I mean, we've always had opinions. You
yeah,
watch Cronkite on, back in the day on the CBS Evening News, and he would talk about this or that or the other, a train derailment. You're going to have an opinion,
I gotta tell you. I
but
gotta,
it's easier now for you to broadcast that opinion to millions of people. I don't know if you've read a news story online and then gone down and read the comments.
Mhm.
A lot of these I have to ask, and it's the same thing with YouTube comments or even a comment on a Facebook post in a group or something like that, is that what compels a person to think that I just have to give my opinion on this, you know? And I'll go
Right.
even further. I'll even talk about Amazon reviews. You buy a tool because you don't want to go down to the hardware store and pay $19.95 for this tool. Well, they're a bunch of criminals. I'd rather go on Amazon and buy it for $4.99 than complain because it's a cheap plastic thing that broke the first time you used it. Well, now you know why the good one was $20 at the hardware store. But if I did that, if I bought the cheapo and it broke the first time I tried to use it, I would say to myself, I regret that. And that would be the end of it. I'd throw it away. Nothing would compel me to go back to Amazon and get on that review section and say, this thing is a cheap imported piece of trash made out of plastic, and I don't know why they ever bothered to sell it. It's one thing to make a bad choice, it's another thing to announce it to the world. You know, it is so easy to put our opinion out there. I mean, we're doing it now. It's so easy to put our opinion out there. What drives a person to do it?
Oh,
I
I can
don't
tell
get
you
it.
what. I can tell you what drives us. It's like, why the hell not? We might as well say. So I love how you. There's. I love how you realize in the main other thing you say, well, wait a second, we're kind of doing that with the show. Um, before what you said, before, before when you were saying, you reminded me of a situation that I had, where I had gone to the local government, right? And I was in mid battle. This was years ago over an issue. Um, and this one guy that's an attorney guy for them and stuff. And he was on opposite conversations of me and this and that. And we started off and no, because you got to understand. And he was getting heated and stuff. And at some point, I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But he didn't take that makes sense. He kept going, no, no. And I said, no, dude. I said, hold on. I just said that makes sense. And he said, oh, okay. And so his engine was still, you know what I'm saying? Like the motor was still chugging along and he couldn't put the brakes on. Okay. Um,
Put her in
but
neutral,
I
Doug.
think that I think it's human nature what we do and all these things. And we get passionate and stuff. I,
Mhm.
I think it's okay. Whatever, like if people want to do that comment, I've done it before on certain products.
Sure.
Um, why do we do it? You asked why do we do it? I think it's just like maybe you feel like you've been burned and you're saying like in that case
Yeah.
and you're saying, you know what? These people burned me. I'm gonna go ahead and leave a review because it might save somebody else.
And
Um,
that is
Stuff like that.
legit. If you're trying to warn people, look, don't buy this. It's not what they represent. This is not a 10-foot by 10-foot pop-up canopy. This is a little 6-foot by 6-foot toy that better not go outside or it's going to fall apart. Don't buy this. This is a bad product. That I can see. That I can understand. But have you read the Amazon reviews? They're leaving 2-star reviews on a product because the UPS driver was a day late. What does that got to do with the product? That's
Let me
got
ask
nothing to do with the product. Come on, man.
random question, but pertinent in my mind at least. to this. So talking about products and what we're getting and overseas and this and that. Your opinion, how likely? Your opinion now, how likely would you foresee that in 270 years from now, mind you, 270 years from now, that all of us or our descendants here in this country will be speaking another language, likely Chinese? Tell me.
I don't think it likely.
Okay. Is there any percentage that it might happen in your mind?
Oh, sure, there's a small percentage,
What would
but
that be? What would that be roughly?
half of a percent maybe,
That little, okay.
because English is spreading. English is one of the fastest spreading languages on the planet. It is the official language of aviation. If you fly to any country, doesn't matter what country you're from, if you fly into any country, when you contact the tower, you will speak English. It is the language of certain international trades. There's a couple that I follow. Here's one for you. Okay. This couple is, they live in Belgium. She is from the Ukraine. He is from the Crimea. They met through work. He got a job offer in Belgium. They bought a farm. They're restoring this farm in Belgium. The IT industry is all English. They speak a little bit of Dutch because they work in that region of Belgium. She speaks a little bit of German because she lived in Germany for a little bit, but they both speak English because they have to for work. And in the IT field, that's the language. That's the default language. So English is spreading through various industries into countries where it was never really that important to learn. So will we be speaking Chinese? I guess, anything is possible. Simplified Han is still the most popular language on the internet, but that's only because of the number of people in China who use the internet who use that language. As far as spoken language is concerned, English is growing faster. So,
Well, I think that the correct answer to that question that I posed is that the safest answer and the truest answer is that we don't know.
No, we don't know.
Anything's possible.
Sure.
Because 270, I think I said 275
270 years from now, yeah.
That's if we went back 270 years from this point right now, that would put us in the 1900s, 1800s.
Well,
that would put us
in the 1700s.
Late 1700s, latter half of the 1700s. That's a far journey forward or backwards.
Yeah.
It's
well, no, actually, that would be 1851.
Would it?
Yeah, 1851.
That's not as far as what I was thinking, but not as it's still not chump change.
Well, they said there would be no math, and they lied. So.
Right. Well, time. Those stretches of time, whereas before, I would see it like, wow, 1800s. Now, in lieu of, or I'm sorry, due to the research and whatnot and study of history, for my purposes, I no longer look at it. Still is, but I no longer look at, like, let's say 1890s. I'm like, within our scope. 1870s, within our scope. Once, even 1850s, but once, the way I'm looking at it now, and this is just my perception due to what I do, once you start getting into the low teens of the 1800s, now I'm thinking to myself, okay, now we're getting into some serious business. But I kind of have now in my mind put the 1800s into our close proximity within the scope of what I study, in that it feels close. But that's due to me searching birth records and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, now that's a different world. Oh boy, that's prior. You said anything like 1950s, and I'm like, holy smokes, 1950s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
how
It's all,
things.
everything's relative. And I got to correct myself. My math, they said there would be no math and they lied. I subtracted 170 from 2021. You said 270. That would be 1751. So you were right the first time.
Okay, so well, make sure to keep make
Yeah.
sure to keep this in the this part in the podcast if it
Oh,
makes sense.
it'll stay. It will stay. Believe me. It's my
Um,
edit.
um, so that is an extreme
Hmm.
where it's getting into like further back, um, beyond, because now 1700 paperwork is difficult and this and that. I want to address something. This is left field. I don't know if it's. I saw Greg pop in Snow Crusher. He posted a really great video. Now this is going to be left field for everyone. A great video on DNA and whatnot. He just all of a sudden, it just so happened to be that he private messaged me that video the moment that I was wrapping up my actual update video from 2021 that same at the same time. So but he posted a really great how DNA works and stuff and what you can get out of it and not get out of it and stuff. And then on the heels of that, I had already posted. So it's funny how people, whatever subjects, that's another fascinating thing. I guess vibes where people are interconnected to some degree with a topic that we all are sharing more or less. And it's happened to us before,
Hmm.
where we're kind of skirting the same topic individually. And when we get together, it just so happens, I don't know if it's a consequence of that we're making associations that maybe aren't there, but we make it fit, or if it's there's something else,
Well,
if that makes sense.
I think it's something else in that. That's what brought you and me together, was the fact that we are both, generally speaking, interested in more or less the same thing. You have interests other than mine, and I have interests other than yours, but we do share a lot of common interests. And we both watch videos on those interests. So it's not surprising to me that if it popped up in my suggested list, it'll probably pop up in yours too.
Yeah,
So there have
yeah,
been several times that I have found a video on something ancient Roman,
yeah,
and I'll say, "Hey, did you see that?" And you're like, "Oh, was it this guy?" Yeah, that guy. Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw that video. So we kind of, I won't say we travel in the same circles, but we travel in similar circles. So it's not surprising to me, and it's the same with Greg. So it's not surprising to me that Greg would have posted a video about something that you're interested in and that you were getting ready to post a video on.
yeah. Well, no, he private messaged it to me.
Mhm.
Um, and I just found it, an interesting thing that I was working. I was
Yeah.
wrapping it up at the time when he posted. Um, yeah, so it's just similar. Well, so you could make the argument that, and I don't know that you'd probably agree with this, but people in similar wavelengths, let's say,
Hmm.
tend to gravitate
Uh-huh.
towards each other
Uh-huh.
to have hangouts or conversations, or
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
somehow there's something that amasses people that are into rebuilding engines, or
Yeah.
into like D&D, or into
It's
conspiracy theories.
exactly right. It's that tribal thing, and you're a part of that tribe.
Hmm.
It is that kind of thing. And guy, yourself, Greg, Doc, Steve, Jamie, you're all a part of the tribe. And that's why there is so much commonality, and why there is so little to surprise one another with, because that Antarctic video that I sent you came from so far out of left field, because it came from out of left field to me. I had never looked for it, never thought about it. It just showed up, and I said, yeah, I'll give it a gander. And I thought, oh, I got to send this to Eloy. He'd love this.
The way I associate, so um the way, and by the way, Greg, since we're talking about how tribal and this and that, Greg, be sure this coming weekend, Manitoba Vampire Movie Festival, half off. They're selling all sorts of souvenirs and collectibles. Just keep that in mind.
There's all the stuff
Um,
they had left over from Halloween.
yeah. It's a little late in the season, but
No, it's on clearance price for next year.
you could fill up your closet with
Yeah.
with more stuff. Um, in a way, it's kind of like the Kevin Bacon twice removed thing or whatever the hell.
Yeah, the 6 degrees. Yeah.
6 degrees. When you showed me that video, the first thing I thought of, believe it or not, was the movie The Thing
Uh-huh.
from back in the 80s. My dad took me to see that movie, and it was a horror movie, but it's out in the cold and such, and that's where I linked. I said, "Oh, that's cool," and then I watched it, and I actually there's always a connection to something else that you can associate in a conversation or something that somebody brings up, in my opinion, unless it's something so out of left field, like I was years ago. I've told you this before, but what the hell, it fits.
Yeah.
Years ago, I took my dog to the dog park,
Uh-huh.
and I let him loose, and there was not too many people. One dude comes, sits on the bench. I'm sitting there watching Vigo run around. Guy's watching his dog. We get to talking, and I said, "Oh, so what do you do?" And he says, "Well, I do this, this, this." He goes and gives me such a convoluted, complex explanation of what he does. I just looked at him, and I felt ashamed. I could not understand one word. I left that dog park that day not knowing what the hell he could have made it easier, you know. I work in an office and I do such and such, or I do, but the way he explained whatever the hell, I forget now but he said it in such a way. I don't even know if he was farting around with me or something, but he said it in such a way where it's like that commercial where the funicular valve commercials. It's kind of like that, just ridiculous.
I know, you give somebody, people who like to use jargon like that to try to impress people,
Yeah.
they just bug me. It just, well, just say it. Will you just spit it out? Just say it. Come on. Don't try, never use one word when 3 or 4 will do,
You had to good night, Jim.
We need to do our wrap up before we start hooting in the chat.
Okay, so yeah, because that's gonna be just random, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll say this. We go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time, and we're the Trampled Underfoot Podcast show. We're here on YouTube. We're also over on Facebook, where you can catch all those posts that we do, like the video that Mark is fixing to do sometime soon. Pictures, posts, and commentary about the shows you can catch over on our Trampled Underfoot Podcast page on Facebook. And we also have our website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com, and you can catch our past episodes there. I'm while I'm telling you guys this, I'm thinking to myself, how many times do I say Trampled Underfoot Podcast? On our website, which is a .com with our name, you can catch our past episodes by pressing the the Wayback Machine button, and we have plenty of shows there with titles and the art, and you can check that out. We're also sponsored by
Steve Nealon at Harneal Media, your one-stop website shop. Now look, just you and me, we're talking here, okay? Just, it's all right. It's all right. Don't worry about it. If you're looking to get a website started, you need a web presence. Maybe you're thinking about offering products for sale, so you need a web store. Maybe you just want a blog, a family blog, a vlog. Maybe
A
you want to
vlog.
set up a store. Maybe you want to set up some merch. Steve is your guy. He can set you up with an on demand print service where you don't have to worry about keeping stock on hand. You don't have to worry about sizes. You don't have to worry about shipping. You just design the product. Steve can help you with that. You set everything up and you sit back and you watch the orders come in. You're looking to start a website with a web store, Steve is your guy. He'll do as much or as little as you would like. If you know about running a website and just looking for a web host, Steve is your guy. If you don't know anything about running your website, Steve is your guy. He'll take care of you. That's Harneal Media, HARNEAL media.com, sponsor of the Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com website.
All right. Well, listen, folks, enjoy the rest of your week. We're going to go ahead and boogie on out of here. We do an after show, and that's what's going to be going on. So if you want to catch, if you're listening, you want to catch that, you can always come over to our YouTube page under the same under the same name, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. So we'll catch you next time.
All right, that'll work.
I thought you were
Okay.
gonna say. I thought you were
Nope.
gonna say, "See ya."
I'm going to let you get the last word this time, but don't get used to it. Okay. I'm going to look for that video real quick and post it over on Facebook. I am listening, but
Okay.
So-
So I'll go ahead and do your part here.
okay.
Change stuff up here. Let's see.
Alrighty. I found the video.
So let's see. Nobody's saying anything.
Nobody is saying anything.
Hula hoops are a potato chip in the UK. I can explain that. Hunger. I have no idea how that associates with anything. Let me continue.
Oh, I was talking about how to explain fads. I said explain the popularity of the coonskin cap. Then I said explain the popularity of the hula hoop. So he was saying hula hoops are a potato chip over there. So the explanation was hunger.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I know, huh?
A new knife that cuts food. Buy one set of 500 knives and get the next set free.
Exactly.
And not only that, we'll throw in a brown paper bag for you to carry them in. Americans seem to love quotes, especially from movies. With great power comes great irresponsibility. Just kidding. Responsibility. We don't. Persimmon and pomegranate sounds good. You're gonna have to take this over because I don't know how to associate. You know, it's funny. Removed from the. So you do this much better. I'm trying to figure out why we're talking about pomegranates now. What the heck?
Because I said I was talking about there are certain food combinations that just don't go together, and that there's a reason why we don't have persimmon smoothies with extra pomegranate.
But what
because
was that?
It just doesn't go together.
What was that on the heels off of? Of what topic?
I was talking about quit tinkering with food. We've kind of done it.
Gotcha.
It's time to
remember. Can someone send me that video? I'd like to watch that. I guess he's talking about the ice wind.
Yeah, the Antarctic video. I'm posting it right now on the Facebook page.
Linda Lindsay says maybe he already had the hots for her.
Oh yeah, talking about the Tinder date and Antarctica.
And he was just looking for an icebreaker. They were both looking for an icebreaker.
Or something. Oh, now come on.
They were both looking to shut down. They were both looking to shut off the breakers and keep the lights as dim as possible.
Okay, it is posted over on our website,
Okay.
Trampled Underfoot, not on our website, excuse me. It is posted on our Facebook page. Go to Facebook, look for Trampled Underfoot Podcast, and it's the second post down. We have one pinned to the top that I need to change because it's 3 years old.
Okay. Harneal says, "What?" He says, "What? You mean the internet isn't the real world?"
It's all a state of mind. It's all a state of mind.
It's it's
I guess. Okay, I'm finished. It is posted. I guess my big thing with people taking the internet too seriously is if one person makes any kind of a statement, you've got 30 people ready to jump down their throats and tell them how wrong they were. Where if you heard the same statement out in public, you'd probably just keep on walking. You wouldn't engage, you wouldn't say anything because well, it's none of your business. You know, some guy sitting there talking to his wife on a park bench, and I'm not talking about a fight or an argument, but he says something like, well, you know, the blue lizards are out this time of year. And if you know, well, no, blue lizards come out in the spring, you probably would never say a word. But if he posted that on Facebook, keyboard warrior kicks in. You know, that's where I was going with that. It just to me, it's just kind of weird.
but isn't it designed to do that?
I don't know, is it designed to do that? I think we are designed to do that because, like I said, that anonymity of the keyboard kicks in.
No,
Because
you're
there's,
saying so you're so isn't a comment section the purpose of a comment section to leave comments and interact? So what I'm saying is,
yes,
isn't it designed for us to do what we're doing?
it is designed. You know what? I don't think it was designed for the way we were using it because I don't think anybody could have anticipated where we've taken it. I don't think Zuckerberg had any of the stuff that's going on Facebook now in mind when he created Facebook. I don't think that the creators of YouTube had any of the stuff we're seeing on YouTube in mind when they created YouTube. I think they just thought of it as a way for people to share video files with one another. I don't
So
think
you
they ever anticipated the possibility of somebody making money posting videos.
No, I think they did.
The guys who created YouTube, I don't
No,
know that they
not
ever anticipated it.
no, not them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You know, so we have it's their platform,
Actually, no, not
but we have changed it for our use is what I'm getting at.
well. We have, but I don't know that that's necessarily. So I was gonna say that I think that Zuckerberg was quite aware. He may not have been in the early days aware of the different methods used now, but the idea of advertising to people in a captive audience
Oh,
situation, I
sure,
think
sure.
that was
That I'm not disputing that. What I'm saying is I don't think he anticipated that we were going to use it the way we are using it. You know, he had a certain criteria, he had a certain set of steps, and he had a bunch of things that he thought was going to happen. And maybe some of that's come true, maybe some of it hasn't. I mean, they've taken a lot of things away from Facebook that just flopped and nobody used them. But I don't think he anticipated the daily arguments and that people would be so willing and eager almost to just get into fights. I don't think anybody really could have anticipated that. You know, it is a public soapbox, but only if you make it a public soapbox. You know, I,
no.
I
I
know
don't.
I know several people who never make anything public, and they talk only with their friends. So they don't have these discussions and these fights, and they don't join groups. They don't get into any of the other stuff. They just stick with friends and family. And you send them a friend request. If you don't personally know them, forget it. They're just going to delete it. I don't know this person. Goodbye.
Right. No, I don't know about that one thing you said about that he wouldn't have anticipated. Because I remember just on the AOL chats
Mm-hmm.
that people were in certain chats, because you'd open up different rooms and stuff.
Sure.
Certain rooms were like the battle for politics or the
But
battle for, you know.
true, but you also had moderators and guides in the old AOL chats that would come in and ban people from certain rooms on occasion. I'd seen it happen in some of the trivia rooms I used to hang out in.
I'm just saying that there's examples
You know,
prior to
but
Facebook of people
oh, well,
using these internet
sure.
things in ways that are conflict, you know,
Well,
starting and whatnot.
yeah, and people did it on BBSs too. I mean, before there was an America Online. But what I'm getting at is I don't think that anybody could have anticipated us using social media the way we use it when that social media was created. That it just
No,
kind of morphed. Yes, it is their platform, but the people who use Facebook at the end of the day make Facebook what it is. And if you don't believe that, go to Friendster. Remember Friendster?
no.
Neither does anybody else, because it went away because nobody used it. They didn't like it. It kind of went the way of MySpace. It went away, you know. So, and that's a subject in and of itself, is why do certain things hit and why don't they hit? You know, and that goes back to the whole fad thing. Now, Jamie says here, comment section were designed for feedback, not for people to be assholes. Well, that's true.
That's not true.
But then again, well, no, why would you design something for that? I mean,
No, it's not true. So,
it was designed for feedback, is what he was saying.
yeah, but the problem with that is that obviously I get the intention, but the problem with that is that what is the standard of asshole?
It's kind of like art. You can't define it, but you know it when you see it.
So if that's the case, which I agree. Well, no, I think that there's poignant moments of that where, you know, what I'm trying to get at is that one person's feedback is another person's, this guy's being a jerk.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that it's in the world of, it's a given that you put enough people in a conversation, whatever that, and there will, by sheer the humanity of it, people will become, well, there will be conflict. It's an impossible thing
Yes,
to imagine that
but not
people
to
would
the
stick.
but not to the level you see online. You know,
What do
you
you
get
mean?
100 people together in a room,
Yeah.
and one guy do a 5-minute presentation on sandpaper.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have 100 different opinions on what that guy just said, and somebody out there is going to disagree, but they're probably not going to stand up and call the guy an idiot right there in the middle of his speech. But they have no problem doing that in a YouTube comment.
Yeah,
They're
but
probably not going to stand up in the middle of this guy's presentation and go, "You're an absolute moron. You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about."
right. But
They may say something to him after everything's over with. You know what? You said this, and it really is this.
okay, can I say?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So no. So I'm thinking in the case of an issue with sandpaper,
Mm-hmm.
you could still get pretty passionate. People will get passionate over sandpaper, but I would bet that if the subject is sandpaper, it's one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and if the subject is politics, you've just ramped it up
Oh,
significantly.
definitely. Oh, definitely.
And so there is this scalable situation depending on the topic. So
Yeah.
topics that are touchy
Mm-hmm.
and outside of the internet are also touchy inside of the internet.
But you can understand that. And that's why I avoid that, because there are certain, we both know there are certain channels that are there that drive that conflict, and they want to see that conflict. They want to see the storm in the comment section because that's more views for them, because, reputations travel fast. But you take a guy who is, like I said, talking about sandpaper, there are going to be people that disagree with them. But when you're personal, when you're standing there in front of the guy, you're a lot less likely to be that asshole and have everybody see it right there. And that's what I mean by the anonymity of the keyboard. I can call myself Lucifer 463, which isn't a YouTube channel, but probably will be, knowing Jamie's in the chat. It'll be a YouTube channel before we're done here. And nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows anything about me. I can get on there and I can say anything, whether I mean it or not. That's harder to do face to face. And nobody wants to be that guy. Some people don't mind it. I know there are some personalities out there that they don't care. They want to be the center of attention and you don't know what you're talking about. But it's fairly rare. You know, I'm not saying it won't ever happen. I'm just saying that it's a lot more likely to happen online, especially on a video.
There's
You
also
know,
a situation where in person, like let's say we're not in person, you and I right now, but we are talking with each other, so you can gauge um, just whatever voice tone and all these things. But when writing, as we've discussed before,
Mhm.
it's almost like one has to take that typed out information, and then one has to decide to judge. People will judge, like let's say you write out a sentence, you the in my opinion, it's a difficult. So I'll give you an example. Somebody writes something,
Mhm.
you write something after that, um, and then they write something else. Um, the fact that there's two things that they wrote and one thing that you wrote in the middle, um, you could extrapolate. You could assume a lot depending on the way the replies are that
Mhm.
sandwiches in your reply, and then you're making you're making judgment calls.
Right.
um, but you may be totally off. I may be totally off in my assumption.
Right.
um, but then again, there's also the issue of people being careless with what they type because they don't have enough necessarily any serious amount of respect for what they write. It's just shorthand. And so they'll write out an answer and it seems almost like dismissive, but they're not being dismissive. It's just that that's their
Well, yeah. There's
style. So there's all these. Well, let me just wrap up with this whole idea. So you have all these variables where somebody's more cautious. Like let's say you, when you write something, you'll be more thoughtful in what you're saying because you like the English language, and so you're giving that information out. Hey, this is this information, I'm handing it to you. Whereas somebody else may not be malicious necessarily, but they're lazy about it. Let's say one would, whatever they write out, and then you read that and you're like, well, look at this person. This is, what is this, a joke?
Well,
And so there's
well,
enough
yeah,
room. There's enough room for bad um, situations to occur. That's basically the point.
yeah. You miss a lot in text that you can't. I mean, there's no body language. There's no inflection. You don't know, is somebody making a statement or asking a question. You don't know if they're being flip, snarky, or being a smart aleck. You miss so much just in text, which is why I, generally speaking, don't participate.
Yeah.
Because you're right in using the word anticipation. You have to anticipate what this person is thinking, and you have to make assumptions based on what they typed. And let's face it, not everybody is a master typist. I mean, I am totally supported by spell check. Everything I do goes through a spell checker because I'm awful at it, because it's just my hands. One hand is faster than the other. And I don't know if you've ever noticed in our private messages, if I don't go back and correct it, one of the things that I will spell wrong is anything that ends with an ing. My left hand is just slightly faster than my right, and I hit the G before I hit the N. So it says IGN. I was walking, IGN. I have to go back and correct that. And I do most of the time. Not all the time.
You can also catch people.
So,
Oh,
but
go
my
ahead.
point is that you miss so much in just text that it's not even really worth having a discussion about. I mean, to me, because if I say X and somebody comes along and says, actually, I think you'll find that it's Y. I don't know where they're wanting to go with this. So if I have a reference, I'll say, well, here's my reference, click, and I'm done. That's it. Draw your own conclusion.
This is what I think is the proper procedure that nobody follows, or at least not many people follow. I know that I believe this is the proper procedure, but I don't always follow it. If somebody says something, it types something out, and they give it to you, message it to you, and you read it, and you go ahead and start typing your response to what they've written, not acknowledging the points that they've made, and you send them off this, it takes a cool head on the other side to then take what you just wrote in reply to what they sent you. The first thing they're going to think, if they're a reasonable person, is that one of two things. This is what I would think. A, they read what I said, they understood it. They're not referencing what I just said, so they're not necessarily acknowledging it. Maybe they acknowledge it by default and they're going ahead and writing their reply. But I'm always left with, well, wait a second.
Did you see that? Yeah.
Can you? So, and I think that in writing, so the proper thing in my belief is that you say, hey, and apples, peaches, pumpkin pie, blah, blah, blah. And then my reply is, I want to add something to what you just said, but my reply properly should be, well, yeah, so I see what you're saying, or I kind of disagree with apples, peaches, pumpkin pie. And here's what I think. And so at least you've acknowledged the other person's information. You don't agree with it, or you do, or partially. That can be explained. And what that does is, it not that it disarms, but what it does is that in a honorable way, it acknowledges the other person's information to you, and then you send back your extra thing. So not everybody's going to be that cautious. I know I'm not. I am sometimes. Sometimes I'm not.
Well,
I do shorthand sometimes. And it's because of different people's styles of writing, whether it's shorthand like
Mm-hmm.
brief or very explicit,
Mm-hmm.
um, that confusions can occur, and I think that causes a lot of problems.
But that's a two-way street too. Like I'll give you an example. There's one person I'm not going to name. He's not here now that I know of. But there's one person that I absolutely do not like to um, private message with because he's much faster typer than I am. And he'll ask a question. And before I can get my answer typed, he's asked four more and talking about a different subject.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hate that. You know, if you're going to ask a question, let me finish my answer, then we'll move on to the next subject. So when he sends me a message, if I get the feeling this is going to be more than a 1 or 2 second private message, I'm just like, let's video call. Then we can talk back and forth because I can respond in voice a hell of a lot faster than I can in message. So it's a two-way street. I get what you're saying. If you type out something and send it in a private message, at least acknowledge that you read it. Maybe you don't need to make a comment, but at least acknowledge that you read it. You know,
Or
that's
even
just
when,
common courtesy.
well,
You
it's
know,
common courtesy, and it's more to do. I mean, it should be applicable in any type of sort of level of conversation, but in a conversation that's more nuanced, where you're talking about some sort of topic, that's complicated
uh-huh.
or has many moving parts. Um, if people just put to the side whatever you write out, or vice versa, and they go ahead and just trample, over that, and
Hmm.
give their bit. Um,
Yeah. Well,
there's a discrepancy there in the whole purpose of
yeah.
the conversation. We all
Well,
do it, I think, sometimes to a greater or lesser extent because we're human. But
oh,
I
we're all
think that
guilty of that. Yeah.
the ideal in my mind would be that, to say, oh, I acknowledge what the person's saying, I disagree with it, or I agree with it, or half, and now here's why. That
Yeah.
would be the proper way to do it. We don't
Uh,
always do that.
Jim Dockeral said, most people don't want to hear your opinion. They want to hear their opinion coming out of your mouth. And I see a lot of that too. And over some of the silliest stuff. It's just like, really? You're going to argue about that? You know, I'll give you an example. You get into the CNC groups. The fight between metric and imperial happens day, every day. And it's just like, what are you, 12 years old? Is this, are you on recess? Is this a schoolyard? Grow up and get over it, will you? Some people use metric, some people use imperial. If you don't like the fact that I use imperial, tough. I'm not changing for you. I'm not going to ask you to change to imperial. Just grow up. Get over it. Just why are we still having this fight? Out of supposedly adults, you know? Just knock it off, will you?
I mean,
I had one guy make that comment on one of my YouTube videos. For the love of God, will you please use a metric system? I left him a one-word reply. No. Next. Moved on.
it's you see, but you see, you're getting this type of sort of pushback in that example, and we all
Uh,
get pushback. Whatever you put forward, you're going to get pushback.
mm-hmm.
Even if what you put forward is freaking bad to the bone,
Well,
awesome, there's going to be some form of pushback.
the
Well,
thing is,
go ahead,
what
go ahead.
he didn't even acknowledge is what I do in my videos. If I say, this is 1/4 of an inch, in text right up above it, it comes up and says about 3 millimeters. So when I'm recording the video and I'm speaking, I'm doing it in imperial, but I'm given the metric equivalent on the screen. Just so, I have a frame of reference for 12 inches. I don't have a frame of reference for 304.8 millimeters. I couldn't tell you what that looked like.
Well, I've got a frame of reference for 16 inches. How about that?
Good. You got big feet. Anyway, shoes are expensive. I know. But see, I do the conversion. It's not like he's having to do math, but he's like, for the love of God, use the metric. He didn't say, why do you still use the imperial system? I could have had a discussion with him. But when you come at me with that attitude, for the love of God, use metric. No.
Frankie CNC cracked up on that last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
JP,
somebody acknowledged it.
JP, yeah, really. JP Woodwork says, why haven't I been invited to the special dance nights then? Talking about being part of the tribe.
Yeah.
Jamie, you have been invited. You got to open up the envelope. You got to open the envelope.
The envelope.
Envelope? Is it envelope or envelope?
You better make sure to get that one right.
Let's all take that concept and envelop it.
Envelope it.
Same word pronounced 3 different ways.
The other day I was actually, it's funny. I don't know that JP's still there or not, but he was. What happened?
No, go ahead. I'll bring it up next. I've just found a good comment.
Oh, okay. Well, no, do it.
You were talking about telling Greg about the Vampire Film Festival and everything. Yeah. He said, no, that was last week. This week, it's the Milk Bag Festival. I don't think we need to go into that. No. There's a whole bunch of people sitting out there right now in YouTube land going, I'm not even going to tell you to Google it because I don't want to screw up my search history. Let's see. Seeing here, trying to find. Okay, that's that. And Frankie making rotten sandpaper jokes. Stop it. Yeah, Greg Snow Crusher says, I use both. And you know what people of a certain age do? And this is closed circuit for everybody in the UK, except for you, Jamie. Jamie's an exception because I know Jamie is good with both. But I don't want to hear anybody from the UK complaining about us using the imperial system and asking me when I'm going to switch over to metric. When you people in the UK switch to metric, then you can talk to me. I know you're using meters, you're using centimeters, you're using millimeters, but you're still using miles per hour. You're still measuring distances in miles, which doesn't make sense to me. You know, you're talking about that's 1,000 meters long. Man, that's almost a quarter of a mile. No, that's closer to a half a mile. You're doing math you don't have to do. Pick one,
Yeah.
And measuring the mass of a person, measuring a person's weight in an archaic 14-pound increment called a stone. Oh, wait, is that 16 pounds? I don't know. I don't remember. Now I got to look it up.
What is it they say? 100 pounds and 3 stones.
They 14 pounds. 14. A stone is for Steve Neal and Harney O'Meady just asked him, what the hell is a stone? It's 14 pounds. And you're measuring a person's weight in increments of 14 pounds, and you're giving me crap over a base 12 system? I don't want to hear anything out of the UK about us using the imperial system. When you pop down to the pub for a liter of bitter, then I'll believe you've switched. But if you're still going for a pint, leave me alone. There, I'll get off my soapbox. I was going to talk to you about making that a little part of the podcast. Mark has a rant, because there's a bunch of little stuff that just bugs the hell out of me. And I think it could make for some good content. I'll give you an example. Here's one here. We need to stop saying, we're pregnant. No, we ain't. She's pregnant. The guy's along for the ride. We ain't pregnant. Stop it. Women,
are you trying to tell me?
Women, quit trying to draw us into it, and men, quit thinking you're more important than you really are. You're not. You're along for the ride.
Excuse me. Are you trying to tell me here, live on the air, that you, in your days on this planet, that you, so the we're pregnant, you've never seen a grown man give birth?
Nope. He's not pregnant. He's along for the ride. He's not sharing in the birthing experience. No, he's not.
You're very controversial.
I may be. I may be, but I just don't. I just don't see it as he's not participating. I mean, his job was over.
That's how, well, I mean, so to be politically within the bounds, I will just say that I do not either condone or disagree with said comments about male birthing. Oh, wait, what was the thing about we're pregnant? Yeah.
We're pregnant. We are not pregnant. She's pregnant. He's along for the ride.
Do you think that you could uphold that in a court of law? I don't know.
Oh, let me ask you this, Eloy. Okay.
Yeah.
You go over to your aunt's house and she says, let's go to the store. She gets in the driver's seat. You get in the passenger seat. Are you both driving? No. She's driving. You're along for the ride. It's the same thing with pregnancy. The guy's along for the ride. I'm not saying his work is over with. His work just begins when the child is born.
Not in the 1800s.
The woman is doing all the hard part. And the guy is just there. You know? The guy's just there trying to keep everything functioning, as is she. She's the one that's pregnant. She's doing the difficult part. Guys, quit trying to make yourself sound more important than you really are.
I saw this.
Just my opinion. And the views expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of its sponsors.
Yeah, because it's going to get pretty wild if I say the next thing I'm thinking. It's gonna get pretty wild here. No, I won't go there. I'm gonna actually self-control, and not because. Okay, I'll tell you the. So with all this talk, No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it because it's political and it'll cause all sorts of mayhem.
So you don't like the idea of me doing a little rant to get us going on a topic or something like that, or?
No, I like it, but what I think is that it will, by its nature, force me to say what I think.
Oh, well, that's kind of the point, but just keep it on topic.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that, if you're gonna rant about something that kind of makes you think like, well, this is not right. There's a level of honesty there. Whether what you're thinking is correct just for you, or just your personal, or
it's just my opinion.
Yeah, but sometimes what your opinion might be runs into possible things where I might say current. In other words, it could become, depending on the subject, political, social, economical, all the topics. So it would be good, but it would be dangerous because we've usually tried to stay
Yeah,
away.
I can see that, but I think pregnancy is pretty safe.
Not when you're thinking, not when the first thought comes out of Buddha Judge, the transportation
Well,
guy holding with a strapped on fake boob and suckling a little baby as if he was not, that's the first thought I thought. How ridiculous. I mean,
well, that's what I mean. That's a guy trying to be more important than he actually is. You are not the mother. Stop it. That's a cry for attention. Somewhere along the line, daddy refused to buy him a pony. That's a cry for attention.
I mean, we don't
Stop it.
know the thing, but see,
Yeah.
that's where that would lead, and then
Oh, okay. I see what you, I see. I get your point. I'll have to come up with safe topics.
there
Frankie
is.
says, Frankie says, Mark's on his George Carlin rants. George Carlin's got nothing to do with it. This is just something. I mean, my wife and I have these little things on the dinner table at the dinner table. I'll hear something on TV, and it'll just set me off because it just hits me the wrong way. I'm like, it's kind of like Family Guy. Peter, you know what really grinds my gears? It's kind of like that, you know.
You know what my favorite George Carlin. And by the way, I George Carlin is like a yin and yang situation, or not yin and yang, but sort of like hot and cold for me, because some of his ideas I just can't handle. But at the same time, he's got some very intelligent and poignant things. And one of
Uh-huh.
my favorite ones has to do with when he does his skit about the earth and people trying to save the earth. He says, you people, you're trying to save the planet,
Mhm.
as if the planet cares about you, as if it wouldn't blow you off like some nuisance, like some bad cold. And
Yeah,
the way he goes, have you seen that skit?
I have.
So the way he develops it throughout the conversation, any person, any thinking person listening to that, I can't see any way with any reasonable that a person can't go away from that thinking. Number one, people are so arrogant about what they can control. Um, he basically made a laughing stock of all these people that
Uh,
think that they have the ability to control things that are
uh-huh.
beyond their. And I love the irony of that.
Yeah, and that was he didn't say these words, but my takeaway from that skit, that whole routine, was that nature always wins, and I use that line a lot. Nature always wins.
See, I took it the other way. I took it, although I agree, but I took it the way of people are so arrogant trying to do this and
and
this and
that's
that.
and that's what I mean,
Yeah.
that humans are so egotistical and arrogant to believe that anything they do is really going to change what nature can and will do. And that's what I mean when I say nature always wins.
How much pollution or contribution of CO2 has the volcanoes in the Canaries added to the system?
I mean, how much have all these fires that happen out here every year? I mean, 1 hectare of land, and I don't remember where I heard this. So this may be apocryphal, it may be completely inaccurate. But I think it was a TED talk, and I don't remember who it was that I was listening to, talked about when they burn 1 hectare of land. That's the equivalent to all the carbon monoxide of 6,000 cars for their entire life, to include their manufacture and production. So when you burn 1 hectare of land, that's the same amount of carbon that 6,000 cars are going to create in their lifetime, to include building the cars.
I just remembered the that you're that we're talking about. George Carlin in that skit, he's got one where he says, "Ask the people at Pompeii how they're thinking about and he does the freezing
Yes.
pose, how they think of the earth if they're affecting it,
Or
he
if they
does the,
feel like a threat. Yes.
yeah,
Surface.
yeah, that's what
The
he
earth
said.
is going to shake us off like a bad case of fleas.
That's what he said. He said, ask the people in Pompeii if they feel like a threat to the earth today.
Yeah.
And it's so
Well,
good. It's so good. And yet, more people need to see that skit just for, for that.
I think we settled this in the 60s when we all decided don't pee in the pool, right? More people need to remember that. Just, clean up after yourself. Don't be a slob. Why is there so much plastic in the ocean? Because people are throwing it on the ground. Stop throwing your trash around. Do the right thing.
Well,
If you
he addresses that too. He said, where do you think plastic came from, folks?
Yeah,
Now it's
it's
just
the
going to
earth
be.
plus plastic.
He's so right about. I mean, look. At the same time, we're not animals. I mean, well, but, we don't just throw crap around. I mean, we do have
Well,
some sort,
we
but
shouldn't.
we shouldn't. But he's right in that. It's the earth plus plastic. It really is.
This is getting philosophical here, and we've been on for almost 2 hours, so we might want to think about being short. But this is getting philosophical here. I will not deny that there are synthetic things, but is anything truly man-made? I mean, we only have what is available to us here on Earth. So when we take a substance like oil, let's say, and we boil it to a certain temperature, it creates this. And if we distill it and condense the fumes off of it, it makes that. And we take what's left and we boil it a certain temperature, it makes this. So yes, we have made that, but it all comes from a substance we took out of the earth.
Right.
Because when you stop and think about it, everything, if it isn't grown or caught, it has to be mined. So is there anything really truly man-made?
What they're arguing against, although they don't make the argument, they're actually arguing against alchemy, against the practice of alchemy, of getting things that are natural anyhow and putting together to form some new thing. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. It just transforms into whatever, state it happens to transform to. So in a philosophical or in a very real sense, they're wasting their time. I mean, not really. I mean, there are examples like you don't
Yeah.
want freaking bottles
Well,
choking creatures,
no, we
but
don't. And I'll agree with that. But it all comes back down to us. It's not the and this is something that I'm seeing a lot of, and this could be a whole nother podcast.
yeah,
And that is we keep blaming inanimate objects for our behavior. I mean, you see it on the news all the time. An SUV went through a crowd of people on a street in Los Angeles. What, the SUV just took over? It wasn't the person driving the SUV? I mean, a driver went through a crowd of people on the sidewalk. What he was driving didn't have much to do with it. Plastic is killing the ocean. No, people are throwing plastic into the ocean. Say it like it is. It's us not cleaning up after ourselves. We're supposed to be good stewards of the land. Well, you can't be if you whip the straw out of your glass and throw it out the window. And then throw the cup out a quarter mile later.
right. Well, one person doing that is one thing, but if you multiply that by so many people, then
yeah, well,
you have, and everybody excuses themselves because I'm just one guy, and then in the multiplication of that action, it becomes a problem.
Exactly. Because the country's made up of 300 million one guys.
Yeah.
Frankie CNC and Woodworking says, I can make a coffee table into a pallet. I've been waiting for somebody to come at it from that angle, Frankie. I can see a line of designer pallets, you know, made out of walnut with brass nails, and then, finished with Danish oil,
That actually would be cool.
with a little brass plaque on it by the pallet maker.
And that pallet, whatever
Ooh,
furniture, whatever thing it's going to carry, that's going to be some royal, that'll
oh
be the
yeah,
most fancy
Gucci.
transportation.
Gucci. Only Gucci would have solid walnut pallets.
That's actually a cool video, making the most expensive pallet ever made. That with inlays.
Frankie says, I'll get on it.
You can make inlays on the pallet and make it like just and like the whole video, and you just make the nice what you call finish on it and buff it out and make it nice and shiny. And this is the best, most expensive palette ever created. It's so random and so counterproductive that it's awesome.
I'm going to make some people mad. Cut up a river table and make a pallet out of it. Can we end the river table thing now? Is it done?
I don't think that people are doing that much anymore.
Good. I am so tired of the river table thing. They had their day. But at the end of the day, you've got a chunk of plastic.
No, but so the problem with it, see, there's no problem with it because if you like it, you like it.
Yes.
But the problem that I see with it is that now everybody's got, it's kind of like popcorn ceilings.
Exactly my point. Are we about done with it? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's kind of like if everybody's got one, it's no longer sexy.
Yeah. Friends don't let friends make river tables.
No, yeah. That's the problem with that.
Let's be done with it. Okay.
I mean, yeah, that's what that is.
Linda says, so long as they're making arm blankets, river tables aren't going away. Oh my God. You know what the arm blankets are, don't you? It's where they're taking roving. It's called roving. Basically, it's the wool from the sheep that is processed into a long rope, not quite a rope, about that big around, about the size of a 50-cent piece. And you pull the fiber from it, and that's what you spin into yarn. Okay. But the key is that twisting motion, because when you twist it, the scales on the fibers lock together and you can't pull it apart. Well, people are getting this roving that comes in huge, long, big balls. It's called a bump, and they weigh about 25 pounds, something like that. And they'll use their arms as knitting needles, and they'll make blankets out of them. And it sounds good until you try to wash it, because that's also how you make felt, is you take that unspun fiber, get it wet, agitate it, and all those hairs lock together, and you've got a felted up mess.
Gotcha.
So they'll make it and it'll look pretty for about 35 minutes, and then Susie spills a drink on it, you got to clean it, and it's like, oh my God. So not a good thing.
Take a classic car and turn it into a Yugo.
Yeah, well, the Yugos came from somewhere.
That would be so counterproductive. It's one of those weird things, right? Like the palette thing, where you take something and it becomes something. I like the kind of juxtapose sort of.
Some of that stuff is fun. Like I saw a 4-wheel drive smart car online. That's fun. I saw a 4-wheel drive Corvette. That was a little sketchy. But what the heck? I mean, if you've got a couple $100,000 burning a hole in your pocket, why not?
Well, I think we'll end on that high note.
Sure.
It's right at 2 hours. So
It's been a tour de force, I tell you what. And we do this every week right here on the Trampled Underfoot Podcast. Come on back and see us next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel.
have a good one, folks. Peace.
Take care, y'all.